Welcome to MotivationAddict.com with Julie Saillant. This is where you will find inspiring stories on how to motivate yourself and gain momentum towards success, turning fear into confidence, and how to find divine flow, allowing you to crush your goals. Thank you for being here. And now, let's tune in to today's show.
Hey everyone, Julie Saillant for Motivation Addict. Thank you for being here on this episode. I am super excited. I have Darby Bonomi that I'm going to be talking to today. Darby she's a PhD. She's a practicing psychologist with over 25 years experience in facilitating positive transformations in clients of all ages. And her main role is as a sport and performance psychologist. Dr. Bonomi merges her lifelong experience in the equestrian world with her large toolbox of psychological and coaching interventions to improve overall performance, health, and happiness of equestrian athletes. She serves as an advisor to Giant Steps Therapeutic Equestrian Center, and she's on the advisory committee for the USET, United States Equestrian Team Foundation. And she shows currently in the Amateur Owner Hunters and equitation with her horses Little Wing and Da Vinci, alongside her two daughters. She is married, has a college-age son, and lives in San Francisco. So can't wait for you to hear our conversation all about mindset and how to set yourself up for success. See you on the inside. Hey everyone, Julie Saillant from Motivation Addict. Thank you for being here today. I am super excited. I have Darby Bonomi here. It's Darby Firth Bonomi. She's a PhD. She's a practicing psychologist. She has 25 years experience in facilitating positive transformations in clients of all ages. And I've gone over her bio before you got into this video. She's basically a sports and performance psychologist, and I'm dying to speak with her. So thank you for coming. Welcome to the show, Darby.
Oh, thank you so much, Julie. I'm really excited to be here.
I am so thrilled you're here. So excited to talk to you. And everyone, if I'm looking down, it's because I have some notes. I want to make sure that I ask Darby all these great questions. So can you give us a little bit of background on you've worn a lot of professional hats over the years. How did your career evolve to where it is today?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I started out as a clinical psychologist and psychoanalyst, treating clinical patients for many years. I saw families and adults and kids. And then I have three kids, and as I had my kids, I dwindled my practice. I stayed home for about 5 years. After being in practice for about 20 years, I really wanted to be home. So I stayed home for about 5 years to really focus on my kids, and then revamped my practice, coming back, doing a lot of parenting work. There's such a great need and a lot of education in schools. And then I was a lifelong writer. Actually, I took a break, but when I got back into writing, thanks to my two daughters, I saw that there was actually a great need in the horse industry for someone to educate parents. I started out mainly educating parents. There's so many tricky parts of being an equestrian parent, especially if you're not a rider. And so my business started with people just asking me, what do I do? My daughter is falling off all the time. She's crying. I guess I need a new horse. How do I handle this? So I started in just casually consulting with people, also working with people and their communication with their trainers. People, especially non-horse people, really didn't know how to approach a trainer, how to really talk to a trainer about issues. And then gradually I've worked into being more of a performance psychologist. I work with a lot of riders who have anxiety issues or performance issues, perfectionism.
I know nothing about that, Darby. Nothing at all.
Right. It's just part of our breed. So,
yes.
So that's what I do now. I do sport and performance psychology, and I do see some clinical patients also. I have a wonderful practice of great group of people, and I'm super thrilled to be able to combine my riding and my passion for horses and competing with all my clinical and coaching skills.
That's what it's all about, right? Doing what you love and combining it. That's amazing.
That's right.
And I wish that I'd known you back in the day, because I was the only one in my family that rode. So my father understood it, but my mother didn't. And it can be very difficult for any listeners out there that have equestrians and maybe they are not an equestrian. That's a different thought process. They don't kind of understand why the child is so interested, why they can't. Maybe my mother thought it was a phase, right? Like you'll just grow out of it. And then there's those of us that it's a phase. It's really part of our DNA. This is something we can't live without. It's actually therapy for us. Do you have any thoughts? I know I'm throwing you a curveball here, but do you have any thoughts that you might want to express to, if there are any parents out there that are listening that have some children that are riding and maybe they're non-riders and they're kind of like, gee, I don't really understand this. How could they best support their child through this process?
I think you have to try to really understand the passion. I mean, some kids can be diverted to tennis or soccer, right? A lot of parents are afraid of their child getting into riding. It's super expensive. It's time consuming. And so they try to interest their child in something else. And sometimes that works. But if you're truly a horse person, that kind of passion, I mean, you live for that. I just worked with a parent about this, and they just finally bought their first horse reluctantly. The dad was super reluctant, but the mom, who's not a horse person, understood that this is this girl's life. Her self-esteem hinges on this, her whole world. And getting this horse, it's been a beautiful transformation for her, actually, because after getting the dad to agree that for a few years she could have this horse till she goes off to college, you could just see the girl blossom and grow into herself. She's a wonderful girl, super shy, hard worker, but just, again, blossoms at the barn. And so I would say to parents, if you have a kid like that, and it doesn't have to be riding, it could be something else, could be gymnastics, and you're not pushing and they're dragging you to the barn and they're cleaning stalls and saving their pennies to do this, that it's important that you do your best to support them in whatever endeavor it is, because when you have this kind of passion, it doesn't go away. And actually the kid usually, even if the parent says no and the kid has that kind of passion, she'll do it anyway. She'll figure out a way.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing. And skills that we learn in riding do apply even more so, I think, than other sports, but I have to think about that more, right? I mean, how much do we learn with being with horses, taking care of another being, understanding another being, learning compassion, humility. Oh my God, riding horses do we
a lot of humility.
Right? A lot of, you really, I mean, I know this was true for me personally when I started riding at about 10. And, I mean, you learn to go into the show ring, you make a mistake, you might fall off. Yes, people are watching. You learn to get up out of the dirt, roll your stirrups up and do it again. And those are such great life skills. So I think also for non-equestrian parents, I try to educate them on how much there is to learn, especially for girls. I mean, the self-confidence I think that girls gain from this sport is just irreplaceable. It's just hard to get that anywhere else.
It is. And I totally agree with you because, I was kind of going down a bad path with some bad kids in, junior high into high school because I'd moved so many times and I really never felt like I fit in anywhere. And the horses, you're right, you have to be there every day and you need to, pick up the stall and you need to groom them. And even if you're not riding every day, my father thought that it was kind of like, this is her therapy. And he could come in and I talk to the horse just like I'm talking to you. And I still do it to this day. And it really saved me because it does give you that dedication. You have to take care of the animal, but it's also that bond with the horse. And the horses gave me acceptance where I never felt that. And especially in high school, where high school girls are just awful to each other. And I don't know, I just have always felt accepted by the horses.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm so glad you said that riding and horses are so therapeutic for all of us. We all understand that. Any rider understands that being with your horse, even more so than other animals, right? I mean, you learn to trust. I learned to trust with my first horse. And to this day, it's therapy for me. Are you kidding me? I'm sure for you too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm there every day. Even if I can't ride, I'm still giving carrots. I'm still grooming. And I only go if I'm sick or if I'm away, but I mean, I don't go, but otherwise I'm there every day. And it's just, it's a big part of my life. And that's a perfect segue into what people probably come to you for what's the number one thing that people come to you for? What do they need help with?
The number one thing is something related to their performance, anxiety. They're not the perfectionism. They're just a lot of amateur writers come to me, and I'm always impressed of how passionate they are about the writing and how scared they are to actually do it. And the fact that they continue to ride, even though they're so scared or it's so tormented in some way, it really is a testament to the passion of these women generally. So that is the number one thing. And what you just said reminded me of the barn, right, is our sanctuary.
Yes.
I used that recently, right? It's a sanctuary. It's a place. It's supposed to be, and it is. It's a place of calm. It's an easy place to get grounded, right? Horses are very much in present time, right? Yep. They're always in present, and we are not. We're on our phones. We're worrying about what's happening tomorrow, what I try to do is, and people who are so anxious and so worried about their performance, they've lost touch with the fact that this horse is your therapy. He is your sanctuary. Let's get back to that, and let's figure out how we can shed all these other worries and really be present with the horse. Because once you are both on the ground and in the saddle, really present and connected heart to heart with your horse, all that other stuff really diminishes, if not goes away entirely. Maybe we could go on and on if you want me to say more about it. I
think that being present and mindfulness is something that we both teach on and we both talk about, and it's a really hot topic this year. But I think what you're saying is so true, because we're always thinking either of the past, like what happened yesterday, maybe we're still processing something, or we're thinking, oh, in 2 days I have this to do, a meeting, and I have to prepare for it. Whereas horses are right in the present. They are not thinking about anything else because they're the prey animals. They're looking for a dinosaur to eat them. So they are the master teachers, right?
That's right.
Say, no, you're here with me. And by the way, if you look elsewhere, I'm going to nudge you and I'm going to make you remember I'm here. I'm right now. And if you're not interested, then they'll walk away. So I'd love to maybe if you could talk a little bit more about mindfulness, because I just feel that a lot of listeners might be able to use this in their own personal lives or in their business. How could we be more mindful and be more focused in what we're doing?
Yeah, that is a really hot topic, and it's needed more than ever, right? Especially with the dreaded phone, which I have here too, right? The phone was like this morning pulling me away.
As long as you're not riding while you're on your phone, Darby, we're good.
Right. Yes, no, that is right. Yeah, the worst. People do not ride when you have your phone in your So I think, for me, mindfulness, or how I practice mindfulness, is about really paying attention to where you are in the moment right now. And we do have to practice it. It is a practice, and you have to practice it, or I have to practice it. Otherwise, I get out ahead of myself too. So even right now, I can do what I call a mini meditation and feel my legs in the chair and my back in the chair and my feet on this floor, and really pay attention to my hands here and looking at you. And already I'm more grounded and more present than I was 15 seconds ago. And it's so simple, right? This is such a simple thing to do, but we often forget. So I teach a very basic, and you could use this in your office. I can use it right now. You can use it on a horse. What I find is people might be pretty present when they're at the barn, grooming their horse, getting ready to ride. They're nuzzling with their horse. They're present. And then sometimes the really anxious folks get super, the anxiety kicks in when they get into the ring and they're about to get on the horse, or they get on the horse.
Yes.
So one of the things I teach people that I find personally works really well for me when I have nerves is just practicing that mindfulness when you're on your horse. Feel your feet in the stirrups. Feel your butt in the tack. Feel your reins in your hands. Touch your horse, just really paying attention to what he or she feels like. Look at her ears. right? Really just practicing these mini moments of being present. And already just saying this to you, I
Yeah.
feel, I
Yeah, I
can
feel
feel
it
it,
too, because you feel
right?
yourself slowing down because you're
Yeah.
stopping and noticing things that if you're busy and you're up in your head, you're not noticing. And I try to always think, well, what is the horse seeing too? Not just what am
Right.
I seeing above them, but if I was them, if I was him, what's he seeing? Because
Right.
it just makes you kind of, and you can do it incrementally and you can do it anywhere. It just slows you down enough to think, and then your breathing slows down, and then you're more
Right.
focused, and then you're there 100%.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's huge,
Yeah.
because if you're someone like myself who's had anxiety from an injury, it's great. I go in, I'm happy, I'm great. And then there are certain times, maybe if I'm putting the bit in his mouth and I'm tightening things up, or I get to the mounting block, that's usually when it starts really bad, is I'm going to swing my leg over. And then you're thinking, oh crap, and I hate this feeling. It sucks because you don't want it, and you know this should go away, and you know it's not real, but you're just thinking, this is kind of weird. You're kind of thinking from before, right? An accident, let's just say,
Right.
but you're also thinking ahead, like, holy crap, this happened once. Could it happen again? Yes, it could. It could happen right now. And so it's kind of a fight with your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So is that truly the best way to just actually just slow down and start with your heels and then just work your way up into just,
Yeah.
okay, spot by
I
spot?
think that's a great idea. And because if you're worrying about what happened when you fell off, and you're worried about what might happen, right? You're in the future, you're in the past, but you're not present.
Right.
Right. So the goal is really to be right now. And right now, if your horse is about to take off, or right, that because you especially are so intuitive. But all of us, even those of us who don't have as much intuitive skill as you do, we know when our horse is, if we're really present and we're not like, way over here, way over there, we can feel it. And actually we need to be able to feel that, because sometimes you get on and you think realistically, I should get off and lunge them today.
Hallelujah. You're just saying. Okay, that's why we're so like on the same wavelength. Let's talk about this for 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. So at the Equine Women's Summit in January, when I went to Florida, I said this to a group of women, and I said, this is my personal theory. There are days where I do not ride my horse. Okay. I think of myself as a battery. And if I am not at least 70%, 65 minimum, I don't ride. In other words, if I have a migraine, if I'm tired, your body hurts some days. Maybe you worked out and you're just super, like, you don't have any energy. If I'm at 30 or 40%, I don't ride. Or I make sure I'm going to lunge and get those whoopies, we call them, out first.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that? Please talk about that.
I think that's awesome. I think that horse people tend to be perfectionists, right? We just push so hard, and we feel like somehow narcissistically diminished if we don't tough it out and get on and ride.
Yeah.
But we don't treat ourselves as we would treat our horse. If your horse were only at 30%, you would never get on him, right? No. If he looked like, right, you would say, you know what, you need a break or a hand walk or whatever. So I think that's smart. First of all, if you've only got 35%, how are you possibly going to how are you going to do your horse justice? If you have to do this, you're rallying, you're going into some big class, well, then you rally. You wouldn't be at it, right?
At home when you have the choice and you have time in the world, and it's okay.
Absolutely. I think that you must do that, because otherwise you're going to give your horse a bad ride, or you're not going to be fully present. That's when stuff happens, right?
Yeah.
And so I think horses they teach us to do that. It's not like taking your dog out for a walk. I can do that when I'm at 30%, right?
Absolutely.
But, and she boosts me up to 70%, but you can't, I think absolutely horses deserve us to be fully present and on our game before we get on their backs and ask them to be on their game.
That's only fair. And I agree with you, because there are days where I always say, yesterday's horse is not today's horse, is not tomorrow's horse, because obviously if that was true, then we'd all have, Grand Prix at the highest level, or, whatever your discipline is.
Right.
But, sometimes we go to the barn and we're feeling great. We're at 95%. We're like, yes. And they're feeling the same way. And that's when you get those magic moments, where you're just mind melding and, you think it and they do it. It's awesome. But that's not every day. That's probably not even most of the time. Let's be honest. Most of the time it's pretty good. You're pretty in sync. But there are days when you can go and you're feeling really great. And your horse, you notice, is like just having an off day. And that happens. They have their own personalities, as you know.
Sure.
And isn't that the time when we should say, you know what, let's just go out for some grass, or, let's kind of do a little something and call it a day. It's okay.
Maybe you're just doing some stretchy trot and loosening up their body. And absolutely, no, I agree with you entirely. And it's teamwork. Like, as with any athlete, it's teamwork, and you need to adjust to what you have that day.
Yep.
And also the other thing is, horses can't always tell you that, oh, this hurts a little bit, right? So maybe your horse is at 35% because he's a little stiff in the back today. And so what you did yesterday. So maybe today is a stretchy trot day. But if you're not listening, or you're distracted, or you're not grounded, and you're all about yourself and disappointed that you don't get to ride, which I understand, but still, you're not serving your horse.
I agree. And it's all about that commitment to them. We have to them, they have to us.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about one of the questions that you asked me that I would like to go over with you is, we're all so busy, and most of us are amateurs, and we have work, we have family life, we have our hobbies. You may have your horse and you may do other things. You may play tennis, you may bowl, who knows? At the gym, almost everybody goes to the gym or does some sort of exercise and spirituality. And we've got all of this plus the horses. And as we all know, the equestrians, this is a big commitment, a big time commitment. What are your best recommendations? And I'm sure you hear this a million times, but to balance, how can we balance our lives and our commitments so that we feel like we're kind of, giving a little bit to each area, as much focus as we can? We're mindful and we're there, but how can we make it so it's a little easier on us?
I think it starts with compassion, Julie, that we're all so driven. We tend to be, we horse people are, and especially those of us who compete, we're driven and perfectionistic, and we get really down on ourselves if we're not at a 95%, or that if we have to do X, Y, Z. So we can't, maybe you're not at 95% because you had a work thing you had to do, right? And you had to do that. And so I think having compassion for ourselves, and hopefully that doesn't sound cliche, but I think we all have to practice compassion for ourselves as we would our horses. Most people treat their horses much better, like I said already, than they treat themselves. And so it starts with there. You can't do everything at 95% today, Julie. Sorry, right? You just can't.
Come on, Darby, really?
Especially as you get to a certain age. But so I think that you say, sometimes, so it's not necessarily balance. It's more management. Sometimes your work or your family is taking priority, and you have to lay off on yourself in terms of what your riding goals are. If you're a single person and you're 20 something and it's your whole life, then it's different, right? You can go full bore, and that's great for you. But if you're someone who's a little older and you have different components in your life, you can't expect to do it all at this high level all the time. Like I said, if you're preparing for a show, then more of your energy goes into that. But then you'll have to pick up the pieces in your other areas of life when you get back. And that's okay. And I think having more compassion, the point is to enjoy what we're doing, right?
Right.
So driven, and so competitive, and so I'm looking for a word that I can't find, then the joy goes out of it, right? So part of what I actually teach people is, or what I see and try to teach it, is when people are having more fun, if they're really enjoying it in the moment, regardless of whether they're riding at 70% or 95%, but if they're really enjoying that time and they're present, then they do ride better, right? And they enjoy it more, and it's worth it.
Yeah.
Versus the suffering that I see so many people. endure when they get a score that, you know, they've got a 60% and they thought it should be a 70% or whatever.
Right.
So, but it's constant work. This balancing, or whatever you want to call it, is constant. For me personally, it's constant work, because I have very high standards for myself too, and I have to remember to not push full bore on all areas, because I just get, you know, burned out quickly.
Yeah. And take a breath. And as you said, you know, speak to yourself nicely, give yourself some compassion, because, you know, going to the gym or whatever you do for a workout is really great for your body. It'll make you a better rider. It makes you better at work. It releases the endorphins. It's all those wonderful things we all know, but actually doing it and scheduling the time for it, it's just going to balance you out better physically and feel better. And the better we feel, the better, you know, we can give, no matter what area that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just reminded me of one thing that I talked to a client about yesterday, which was she was saying, how is this thing going to work out with my relationship? And I can't figure out how it's going to work out. I have this, how's it going to work out? And she wants to nail it down. And what I said to her is, why don't we reframe it and just change the tone, rather than how is it going to work out, with that desperate feeling like it's not going to work out, to how is this going to work out?
Yes.
This is going to work out.
Yes.
And putting that energy out into the universe, which I totally believe, like, this is going to work out.
Yes.
I may not mentally be able to figure it out right now, but it's not its time right now. She's worrying about the future. In present time, everything's working out. And if we have that attitude and we send that message of, how is this going to work out? This is going to work out. How? Not sure yet, but it is going to work out. Completely changed her feeling about it.
Yes.
It's like, oh, okay, I don't have to force it or make it work. No, because it's not even an issue right now.
Yes.
It's an issue you're thinking about for 2 years from now. So that kind of thinking too, when you can't figure out, how is this going to work out? Sorry, this is making noise. If you can reframe it into a positive, like, it's going to work out, I'm going to have faith it's going to work out, or however you would put that. I find it works out. That's my experience.
We are on the same wavelength. I can't even believe you just said that, because this morning I had that same epiphany. And I always get attacked with, you know, you're trying to push. You're trying to push and make things happen. And it's because we're hard workers and we want things to be great, and we're perfectionists, and that's not great, but we're trying really hard. And then it was kind of like, you know, you need to calm down and just focus on what you have and just relax and try to flow more, because I always used to say exactly what you just said. I don't know what's going to happen today, but it's going to be an awesome day. I always say this, it's going to be an awesome day. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be great. I can't wait to see what happens. When you take that part of it, that how it's going to come to you, everything opens up, because now you're giving the universe a million ways to give it back to you.
Right.
And as you said, you're focused on now instead of what's going to happen 3 days from now. So instead of making it try to happen, it's coming to you. It's going to happen. So, and especially with horses, because they can feel when they know when you're talking to yourself, because you're clamping down and you're getting tight, and you get energy, like right here, I get tight, and you're not flowing anymore. You're not breathe. I always forget to breathe myself. That's a big one for me.
You've been reminding me of this the whole interview. So I think you're right. Breath is incredibly important. So
right. Am I the only one that does that? Please tell me I'm not.
No, breathing is, I forget to breathe too, and I've forgotten to mention it. So I'm really glad you're underscoring it, because,
talk about that. I'd love to hear more about it.
Well, if you're paying attention to your breath, we all hold, when we're anxious, we're holding tight like this. And if you breathe, so often your horse is doing the same thing, and he or she will take a breath too.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so you can actually, rhythmically breathe with your horse, and you'll just see your horse relax into that turn. And so breath is super important all the time, but particularly when you're riding, because the horse feels everything. So use your breath. Thank you.
And they give us that calming signal a lot of times, even just on the ground. They just, and they'll breathe deeply, and then you breathe deeply, or vice versa. You breathe, then they breathe deeply. It's kind of, you're calming. They're trying to calm you down. And my trainer always used to say, remember to breathe, because if you breathe, you'll be more relaxed, and the more flowing you are, the better you are. And it sounds easy to say, I know, when you're up there, I think it's just a habit, but you can unlearn habits, you can change. And the more you breathe, it's been physically proven that your heart will slow down, you will be more relaxed. So that does really help. And then obviously it helps your horse too, obviously.
And, if you forget to breathe, one of the things that I remind people to do is put signposts in your mind around the ring at that tree. I'm going to remember my breath, or at that fence, or that letter. You can plan that into your course or your pattern or whatever kind of riding you're doing, and say, I'm going to jump that jump. I'll use this. I'm a hunter jumper rider. At that jump, I'm going to do the first fence. Then I'm going to come around the turn, and I'm going to breathe at that whatever. And you could just plan it into your course, just as you would plan your fences or your turns, or, and for someone who doesn't breathe or forgets to breathe, it's hugely helpful. And it's a super simple thing, but it really helps.
That's a good idea. That's a really great idea. And actually you could do that just on your way into the barn too. If you feel like you're having anxiety when you're driving to the barn, you could, at a certain spot or a certain sign, you could start remembering to try to ground yourself and think, relax, and try to deep breathe. And even, you don't want to do too much as you're driving, but just a place where you might have a marker to say, it's okay, everything's going to be fine. I heard that, so I'd never done that, but I think that's probably a good idea, especially if some of us get really nervous as you get closer and closer and closer to the barn, if you have a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually do practice this and teach this to certain people who are open to it. I try to prepare myself mentally and spiritually before I get to the barn. So I try not to listen to the radio or do a lot of call, at least give myself 10 minutes before I get to the barn. And it's not really because I'm so anxious coming to the barn, because I'm not, but it's about clearing my space so I can be available to my horse, and so that I personally can take in every second at the barn. Because for me, being at the barn, that's the best time of I'm not there every day, 4 days a week, but that's the best time of my life, pretty much. I love being there. So I don't want to drive in, talking to somebody on the phone or taking care of details. And of course, sometimes I do have to do that, but I really put my phone away and do my best not to check it until I'm finished. I try to really create these boundaries around this sacred space that is the barn for me, so that I can, just because it's as for you, it's refueling for me to be at the barn. After that, I could be having like a day, and then I go to the barn and I come out and I can conquer the world.
Yes.
Problems are small, right? Yes. I feel great, even if I haven't. It doesn't matter how great the ride was. Just being there for me is rejuvenating. So
absolutely.
So I definitely practice that, a kind of, maybe not breathe. I do breathe, and I'll do just some little meditations that you can do while you're driving. I tell myself, and just really prep myself so I can take it all in.
I love that. And I do that too. And I think everybody should do that, because when you come with all your junk from work or a fight with someone and frustrations, your horse can feel all that. And here you are thinking you're going to have the best ride in the world today, when really you've got all this junk, and they feel your energy and they feel your electromagnetic field. And it's sometimes they're like, ooh, I don't know about this today. How's this going to go? And then you wonder why they're getting a little bit of an attitude. So if you can be calm and drop as much junk as you can and be happy and relaxed and in that really great present state, then that is wonderful for both of you. And you have that bond, and it's that Zen that you really, I like to protect that space, because that's my Zen place. That's what we work for. That's what we that's the best place we can be, other than our families probably. So you want to kind of protect that if you can, make it wonderful.
And we could actually take that, you were asking about, in other areas of life, that now that we're so contaminated by the phone and we can work all the time, and we do, and that's life now, but it is really important to set those boundaries around other areas of our life too, right? This is my time I love to hike and jog in the woods, and this is my time, and I'm not going to answer any texts. I'm going to try not to even take my phone, because we need recovery time, right? We need restoration and recovery time. You can't push all the time as hard as we push without some recovery. So, so yeah, not just at the barn, but other areas too. And maybe it's just 10 minutes. Maybe I'm just going to take my dog up the block and just, just clear myself.
Yeah.
But it's all about, we all have to work harder at those boundaries, because our homes aren't the sanctuary that they used to be, right?
Right.
Even our hikes aren't the sanctuary, because we can bring that darn phone everywhere.
Right. Right. And if you work out of your house, like I do, you can work anywhere in your house. So then it's almost like it can never turn off. So you have to really set clear boundaries.
That's right.
As to, when I'm working and when I'm not working, because you need to be able to switch on and off. So, because otherwise, with your phone, and you can take your computer in any room and then you're working. So yeah, you have to really, make sure that you set the boundaries. I know that you work with professionals and amateurs. Can you tell us a little bit about the differences in what, when they do come to you, what do they want? What are their biggest, what are the areas they need help with, and how does that look for each group?
Yeah. We'll start with, we've talked a lot about amateurs, so I'll just start there. Amateurs tend to come, like I said, with performance issues, anxiety, all the things we've already talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Juniors too. I see junior riders being just so perfectionistic. Perfectionism is really, we've mentioned it a lot today, but it really is an issue, and it gets in the way of performance, and it gets in the way of enjoying what you're doing. So I get a lot of people, wanting to gear up for a particular class, but or a final, and they're not riding their best, because the closer they get to it, the more perfectionistic they're getting, and their riding is going downhill.
Yeah.
I get some families coming to me to help them sort out their horse situation, especially non-horse families. They've gotten into it maybe a little too deep. They don't know where to turn. Things aren't going well with their trainer. They're not sure how to talk to their trainer. They're not sure they have the right trainer. So I do that's a different kind of work, but it's a consultative work where I'm not involved. I'm not connected to any trainer professionally. I have a trainer, but that's not, I will help them evaluate, and ask the right questions and get the information they need. So those are some basic areas. And one other thing I'll say is that almost always, well, not always, but a lot of times when people get into these issues that are coming up in riding, they're related to other stressors, other things that are going on in their lives. So we usually do spend some time on other areas of their life. They're having trouble in their relationship, and that maybe is oozing over into the hyper perfectionism we're seeing, and the overemphasis on maybe their riding. So that's part of what I do also. And then with professionals tend to come with frustrations about clients that they just haven't been able to somehow, that maybe there is this perfectionism or high demand or something, and that the professional can't quite work with, or it's just a little bit too much. I'm in awe of professionals, what they do, what their job is. When you think about it, they have to train horses, they're training riders, they're managing a business, they're organizing for shows, if they're doing sales and all that, what they do. To have to be great people and horse people and riders. And there's just so many aspects of that job. And so some people do come to me to help them figure out, how do I communicate better with this person who keeps taking everything I say as a criticism, or who is just having so much anxiety at the back gate. It's too much. I can't actually serve this person. And so, I take over working with the client in terms of the anxiety or whatever the performance issue is. And I also help with the communication, because maybe there's things, a lot of people are afraid to tell their trainers how they're really feeling. And sometimes trainers are afraid to tell the client certain things. And there's a miscommunication. That it's usually that both sides haven't talked thoroughly. And sometimes they don't feel comfortable for whatever reason. And I can be the go-between and help repave this road so that they can communicate more fully, so that both sides can
be heard. That's great.
Yeah.
Great. I like to talk a little bit about expectations. And the reason I thought of this was because in my own life, I've seen many riders go through this, and I think maybe all of us fall prey to this at some point. Sometimes because we're perfectionists, we don't see things clearly. We're too close to a situation. And I'll give you an example. Let's take, woman A, who is a rider, and she rides once a week, and she wants to, she's got a fantastic horse, and she really wants to go to a show and win a blue ribbon, and she wants to move up a level like within a month. Then you've got the other rider B, who's there every day and who has an expectation to move up a level, but she's giving herself 6 months. So you can see which one's real and which one's maybe not so real.
Right.
How do you have any guidelines as to the expectations that you set for yourself and for your horse client?
Well, I think you're right. One needs to be reasonable, and there are a lot of people out there who are unreasonable about their expectations, and then it usually becomes apparent very quickly, right? Like the rider that purchases the really young horse who's like you said, a couple time a week rider, a decent amateur rider, but still only riding a couple hours a week. And then the goal is to show at a particular level. So you really do need to be clear about what you want and what's realistic. And part of that is involving your trainer. So many people, I just wrote a piece about this, that you need to have these conversations with your trainer. This is where I want to, because the trainer will be, if the trainer's worth his weight and whatever, the trainer will say, that's not realistic, Julie. You're not going to get to this level in a month riding 4 times between now and then.
Right.
So I think a lot of us don't want to hear those limits. They don't want to hear what's realistic, but this is true in life too, right? You're not going to run a marathon in a couple months if you're not practicing. So I think it's really important to be clear with your trainer, have regular discussions and check-ins about your progress and what your goals are. And it's really imperative that the trainers are, don't dance around topics and are really clear with the clients.
It's so funny that I'd love to see your piece that you wrote on this, because I actually think that people should interview trainers. And the reason that I say that is because, and I'm sure you probably agree, is because people are afraid. Even if you're older, it doesn't matter how old you are. There's something there about a trainer being here and we're here. And some do give off the air and some don't. And there are great ones and there are not good ones. For everyone works differently, right?
Right.
Somebody who yells a lot, some people love it and that makes them just try harder. Somebody that yells at me a lot, I just am like, bye. Like, that's just not how I work. I need somebody softer and more supportive. So I do think it's important to talk to other people that they've worked with, really interview them. But most importantly, and you tell me if I'm wrong, what your thoughts are, they have to get along with you and your horse.
Yeah.
Because like I have a very sensitive horse. And so if you were with us in the ring and you hit your horse with a crop, my horse will jump. So it's imperative that he gets along really well with somebody who's slow and keeps the noise level down. And, he's got a few things he needs to be comfortable. And, having the right trainer can really make or break you. You've seen that a million times, I'm sure, right?
Absolutely. And there's no need to, what works for you may not work for me and work for the third person. So there are different methods that are all valid, or most of them are valid. And so, and the other thing is that you may outgrow a trainer, right? Right now, you may be set with trainer A, but then you grow either personally or in your riding, and then that trainer isn't the right fit anymore. And I think in our industry, and maybe in all industries, but in our industry particularly, trainers become our family, and we spend a lot of time at the barn, and all that we've already talked about, the barn's a sanctuary. It's so hard for people to leave barns, and it becomes this messy divorce type situation, which is, it's just, for a lot of times, if people would step back and realize that this is what happens in life. You outgrow certain teachers, right? That's why we graduate from high school and go on to college and then go on to graduate school. You you change, and maybe it's just a personal change you need. And you've been to a clinic and the clinician says something to you in a different way, really saying the same thing, but it's like, oh, now I can do this move, right?
Yes.
And so I think if we all had more of a growth mindset in this way, right, that this happens, people move around, that we could really reduce the angst in the industry, because it's just a normal part of development to change.
It's just like you outgrow jobs sometimes. You
Absolutely
come to a job, and then maybe you've learned everything that you're going to learn, and you need to move on because you don't want to stay stagnant. So you need the next level. Or as you say, you change horses, or, it's super hard because, the places where you are, when you find a good spot, your horse is happy, you're happy. And then sometimes when I had to move from Connecticut to Myrtle Beach, it was really, really like, I got to find a place for my horse. I mean, and you got to interview, and it's, how it is. I mean, it's like finding a child a home. So, you want them to be happy, because when they're happy, you're happy. So,
that's right.
It can be really tricky, but
yeah.
I think if you look at it as I've changed and I've grown, we're certainly not the same people that we were a year ago. If you think of it that way, your horse isn't either, and maybe you both need something different. And I do believe that people come into your life at different times, different seasons to teach you different things. Yeah. And it's not always forever. Sometimes it can just be for a little bit of time, and that's okay. Because as said, for you and I, you may be helping someone just for a short time, but then I'm sure you have clients that you're with for quite a while.
Yeah, or they go and they come back. Different issues, right? I mean, that is really just part of life, I think. And the one other thing I'll add is that since I think we're such a perfectionistic culture in general, but certainly the horse folks, I think it's important to remember that no barn is perfect and no trainer is perfect. So, you might find a situation that is right. There are going to be things that you don't like or you wish you had. That's life, right? And that's where communication is really important. Like maybe you need to be taught by an outside clinician once a month, and maybe you need it for this reason. If you have a really good relationship with your trainer and good communication, things can generally work out. And so but I just wanted to put that in because I find so many people wanting to find the right place. And you know how it is in life. Things aren't, if you're pushing too hard for perfection, you're missing what the beauty in what you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes you need to settle for 90%. I don't think there's no perfect barn. There's no perfect horse. There's no perfect human, right? Let's just get as close as we can to those things on my list. And if you can come up with maybe 9 out of 10, we're doing pretty good.
Yes, that's right.
You don't want to go from 3 to 10, 3 out of 10, but if you're generally in the vicinity, nothing is perfect and things change. Sometimes you're at a barn, then new owners come in. So things can change. I know you've mentioned this quite a few times, perfectionism, but one thing I'd like to ask is for injuries. I had an injury. Let me turn this off.
Oh, that's yours. Okay.
As you know, and my thought process is a lot of writers don't talk about injuries. Yeah. It's really weird. They'll say something like, well, Darby, I hope you feel better. I know you're going to get up there soon. I know your horse misses you, that a girl, that type of thing. But nobody's ever said to me, like, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do for you? Do you need support? How can I help you? Because what happens is a lot of times you lose not only trust in your horse, you lose trust in yourself, in your own writing ability. Have you found that to be true in your experience? And if so, how could we change that culture?
Yeah, you're right. I think that's right. I have found that people are afraid. They're afraid of losing their confidence, or they're afraid to even touch that topic. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think people say, how are you doing? But they mean, is your collarbone healing? Not how are you doing emotionally?
Right.
And so, I think awareness, I think I got to write an article on this, Julie.
You should. You should.
Actually, a couple of people have asked me to write this article, so I need to get on it. Because that kind of emotional healing, we're all afraid of it somehow. We're not afraid of breaking our arm or, and the healing of that, but the healing of our psyche and our spirit is something that people run from or somehow tend to be more afraid of. I think because it's not as well defined. It's not, you might take 6 months to recover and someone else might take 2 years, right? Or it'll always be there. So it's not as well defined as how long it takes to recover from a collarbone or but I agree, we need to all be talking about it and be more aware. If we raise awareness, right? If you start raising awareness and talking to people about it, then I think it opens it. I think other people feel safer to talk about it.
I think because, we're all, everywhere I've been, everyone always says, have a good ride. It's always that kind of camaraderie, even though it's an individual sport. Right.
Right.
And I just feel like if we could change that culture and maybe shift it a little bit, that it doesn't even have to be an injury, maybe you just had an off day, hey, how can I support you today? Or how can I help you today? Not physically, but, maybe sometimes, it's really helpful. I'm sure you've said this to your clients, to just have some eyes on the ground, we call it, right? Just somebody in the ring to sit with you. I don't know why, but for some reason that always feels like I feel more confident. I don't know why that is, but it just feels like, oh man, I don't know, maybe it's just the support that somebody's got my back. And you just can take that with you. And then you feel like, okay, this is really good. I'm feeling good about this.
Yeah. No, I think we could promote that in, across the board, more real support of each other. It's an individual sport, but we all are connected because we're all horse people. So we all know, what it's like when someone's horse gets injured. We talk about our own personal injury, but what about when your horse gets injured? Because it's suspensory. Oh man, that's 9 months. We know it, right? We all know, like, oh, the S word,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's not enough support there for, how are you doing, Julie? Your horse is out for a long time. So I think if we could all just talk more about it and be there for each other, it'd be less of an individual sport, because really it's a huge community. And I do feel like here, in Northern California, we've had some terrible fires, and I have been so impressed with our community across disciplines, people coming out of the woodwork to help each other. And the only reason I bring it up is that it's like, oh, it is a horse community, regardless of whether you're a reiner or a hunter jumper rider or a dressage rider. There is a horse community here taking care of each other. But unfortunately, we only feel that in that intensity when there's a crisis.
But wouldn't it be nice to feel it all the time? Because as I say, we're all riding horses. It doesn't matter how much your horse costs. It doesn't matter your discipline. It doesn't matter the breed. We're all riding horses, and that's all of us. It's our passion.
Right.
Like, that's the bottom line, so we can all support each other. So you've got to write something about that. I'll write something and you write something, and then we can compare. That would be good, because I think everybody, it just, even if somebody says I'm okay, it just makes the world a difference to ask the question, how are you feeling emotionally? How can I help you?
Yeah. How are you today? Really? And really ask it with that, not how are you, but how are you?
The real compassion. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I actually try to do this in my, it just reminds me of what I try to do every day as I walk around. I try to really connect, because what you're talking about, right, is really connecting with someone. If you're in the grocery store and the person who's checking you out, and you look at her or him and say, how are you? Good to see you. Or I really love that dress you have on. And you really are looking at them and you're paying attention to really being that present moment. You've just changed her life in that moment, and she feels recognized. And that's really, I think, what you're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. We all know the difference, and we don't think about it as much, but the difference between someone really looking at us and really having that, maybe it's just a moment of caring, but it changes us, changes our day.
It does.
And I think, so we could practice, that's a practice that you could have all the time. Every day. And it makes your community larger, just by the very fact of doing that. So
I'm so glad that you're doing this for everyone, because, equestrians need this. They need this help. And a lot of times it's great to have someone like you aboard before something happens, because if you can teach tools like this to people, then if something does happen or they do experience maybe a little anxiety, it doesn't have to be full blown, it doesn't even have to be an injury. They just all of a sudden have a little anxiety for whatever reason. They have some tools in their back pocket that they can say, you know what, Darby talked to me about this, and I can try to be more grounded. Let me try that little practice. Or let me try to come to my horse calm and centered and happy and see what the response is, versus dragging all your junk from the day and you're still on your phone. And putting it in your back pocket versus just leaving it in your car. So, I mean, I feel like it would be great for you to the more that you can get the tools that you teach out to people and equestrians, then the better off we all are, because we can help each other, and then it ultimately helps our horses as well.
Yeah, and that's what it really is about. I mean, that's why I do so much writing. I love to write, but I also love to educate, and I think the more tools we all have, and that's my job, is to give you more tools than you had yesterday. And because it really is a process, right? We never get to an end point of, okay, now I'm good. Right?
I wish that were true.
Right? I'm always evolving. I'm trying to learn every day. And I think all of us, right? So it's about, just getting more tools in your toolbox, or maybe the tools that you used yesterday, maybe they don't work as well today. So we need a different kind of tool, or a different angle, or you have a different stressor. So I definitely end up teaching a lot of different tools. And like we've already talked about in this interview, so many of the tools we use with our horses in the barn are actually generalized tools. They're useful for our lives. They make our lives better. I think
just being kinder to yourself too, because mindset's huge. When you set intentions and your goals and mindset, I used to talk to myself terribly, and I know a lot of women do this. Since so many more women ride, are equestrians than men, I'll just say a lot of women, things that you think in your mind about yourself, you would never say to anybody out loud. And when you get that attitude and that thought process in your head of, you're not good enough, you'll never get this move, I can't believe this, like, what's wrong with you? Like, this is a common one, like, I've had this horse for 8 years and I can't do XYZ because I'm afraid. You're so stupid. What, look at that little kid. They can ride better than you can. When you start saying those things to yourself, especially if you're on your horse feels that. Yeah. And then it's going to be magnified 100%. So I think if you're caught in that type of a situation, is the best way to handle that just to try to stop and start with the grounding process again and focus? Or how do you break that quickly?
Yeah, to break that quickly, I think you change your thoughts. Like you were saying, if you're saying to yourself, I'm a lousy rider, I don't deserve to be on this horse, the quickest way is to change the thoughts and say, I do deserve to have this horse. I am a good rider. Because the more what you say, right, your brain believes what you say. Words are incredibly powerful.
Yes.
Right. And so it's really important to if you're having that kind of tape going in your head, let's change it. Let's figure out, and you need to work on it. It requires work. There's so much work but it requires work, but you can do it, right? Instead of saying, oh, there I go again. Check. Okay. I'm going to try that again. I can do this move. I'm going to try it again. Oh, there, I got it a little better. You need to transform it into positive self-talk. It's funny that you bring this up because it reminds me of something I was thinking this morning, and I don't know what book I read this in. So I'm sorry I don't have the quote for you, the reference, but this author was talking about reframing your life as if everything, he said, what if this is the best thing that happened to you? What if this is the best thing right now happening? If everything that happened was the best thing. He said, try doing this for a week. Everything that happens is the best thing. Now that's hard. You're in a car accident. It's hard to frame that. But he gave this challenge of, okay, because we don't always know what the best thing is, right? But if you just reframe it as, this is what's supposed to happen, or this is, it allows a little leap of faith. Like, I don't know why, my horse getting injured is what was supposed to happen, but I'm going to have faith that something good's going to come out of this.
Yes.
But that's, again, a reframing rather than, oh God, my horse is injured again.
Yes.
Now, you and I are talking about opening it up, reframing it in a positive way, and then creating that space for something good to come out of it. So, but if you have negative thoughts, you're in on yourself, right? You're turning in on yourself. You're closing down any possibility for improvement. Every time you say to yourself, oh, I'm not good, or I can't do this, then you won't be able to do it. The only way you're going to be able to do that half pass is to say, I can do it.
Yes.
Yes. And I am,
And when you have that loop playing, the first thing is that you recognize it and don't judge yourself for it. Don't beat yourself up. But I like the point that you had. Maybe if this is something that you struggle with, because I did for a long time till I finally started to break it. You take a place where you're in the ring, you know, it could be a number, it could be a jump, whatever it is. And you put the positive in there.
Yes.
Say, I am a good rider. I can do this. I have this. And also I trust my horse. That's been a big one for me because, you know, we always think we're in the driver's seat and we're the boss when really it's a 50-50 relationship, whether you acknowledge that or not. So, you know, I've had my horse as an equine communicator say to me, you got to trust me. I can do this. I can carry you. Like, you got to let go. Let this happen. We can do this. Stop playing the baby, you know, in the baby pool. Let's get to the real stuff. And I think that always happens when you start to challenge yourself because you think, you know, it's scary going out of your comfort zone and maybe your jumps are higher or you're trying to move and it's hard and it's uncomfortable for you and for your horse. But if you have a place in the ring where you can say, you know, a positive affirmation, like, I got this, I can do this. This is awesome. Like, it just starts building on each other and it breaks that tape. So I think
absolutely. And just one thing I'll add, if I could just add that the more specific you can be, the more powerful it is. Okay. Right. I mean, I love positive affirmations. I can do this. And actually that does help on course. You know, I can do this. I got this. Right. But even if there's something in particular, you can be really specific about to yourself, like changing that just helps, right? Makes it into bite size. Like, I can do this, fill in the blank. Okay. I can keep moving forward. And I think because the brain thinks a little bit more in specifics, it breaks it down into small pieces and makes it doable and manageable, right? Okay. Rather than saying, I am a good rider, you can say, I mean, you can't say that, but you can also say, I can ride this fence. I can ride this corner. The smaller the pieces, this also works for high level anxiety. Like, we don't think about the course or the pattern as a whole. You think about it in small pieces, right? And then because that's how we actually function, is in small pieces, right? You're going around this turn, it's your inside leg, your outside hand, etc. Right. So breaking those affirmations down to being something really specific, I think makes them more powerful. Yeah, that's a great idea. But I love that. Having something like in the ring that you can focus on. Yeah. I love that. And then you're just training yourself and just repeating it. And you can change those up, right? As you grow. And you can change that up to different moves. And like you said, keep it very specific. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. The other thing that really transforms my perspective, and I think it helps with other people, is being connected to your gratitude. And again, I hope that doesn't sound cliche, but you know, in this very moment going around that turn, if you're really connected to your gratitude for your horse, for being able to do this, for being out here, for whatever it is, it really drops your anxiety and I think hones your focus and just brings this joy in, which just makes everything better. And I think we all get busy and we've talked so much about perfectionism and how hard driving we all are that we actually forget. It's a mindfulness practice, right? Yes. We forget to be grateful. And so that's another, it can be a mantra. It can be like, I am grateful right now. And okay, maybe I messed up that move. I'm grateful for that opportunity to have tried it. And I'm going to try it again tomorrow. And to me, it changes the world when you're really connected to your real gratitude. It does. And it's been backed by science. I mean, that's the number one thing that changes your energy from low to high. And it's the fastest way to get there. And it can be so small. It can just be, I always say, you know, thank you for my horse and thank you that I'm able to be where I am right now. And I'm here and I'm focused and I'm enjoying it. And like you said, maybe you didn't accomplish what you set out to accomplish, you know, today and you're riding, but you had the opportunity and it's going to get better tomorrow. And just by being grateful every day, and it is, as you say, it's like a muscle. You have to continually practice, but the more you practice, the easier it gets. And then it just becomes a normal thing. Just like I always say this, like, remember the first time you tried to trot and remember how you used to have to post and you do around and around and around and you'd be like, up, down. You'd be like, I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to get this. And then all of a sudden one day you got it and you're like, I got it. And now you do it. You don't even think about it. It's automatic. Right. It's the same way when you're learning anything new now, back then.
It's the same frustration, but eventually you'll get past it and you'll be able to do it, and your horse will be able to do it, and it'll become easy for you. So it's just about being grateful and being happy where you are. So
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for being here, Darby. I love talking with you. You're so cool. Thank you for being here. This is awesome.
This has been a joy. I'm so grateful. Yeah.
I'm going to have all the links to Darby's information up. Is there anything we're going to have, your email and your website? Is there anything special that you wanted to leave the listeners with today before we sign off?
No, I'm just, like I said, I'm grateful to be here and to talk to everyone and to share some of my tools and my gratitude for just being in the horse world. So
yes.
Go ride.
Yes, go ride and have fun with it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Darby, for being here. I appreciate it. I hope you all got something out of this. I know I did. And you guys have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thank you, Darby.